Hello, everyone. Welcome to Inside the Americas. Here's a look at today's show. Athletes, movie stars, and no less than 12 world leaders have been named in the now infamous Panama Papers. More on the company at the heart of the financial scandal on the way. Then a bruising week for Republican frontrunner Donald Trump, capped off by a big loss in the Wisconsin primary. And we'll look at a key issue in Peru's presidential campaign, the forced sterilization of 300,000 indigenous women. I'm Jeannie Godula. Well, the Panama Papers dropped like a bombshell this week. 11.5 million documents were released, part of the biggest ever leak in journalism history. At the heart of the papers, an inside look at tax evasion, offshore companies, and the people who use them to hide their wealth. The leak has already forced the Prime Minister of Iceland to resign and lists dozens of other big names, including football star Lionel Messi and actor Jackie Chan. Now, not all offshore accounts are illegal, and being named in the papers doesn't necessarily mean you've done something wrong. But it does shed new light on tax havens and how they work.
At the epicenter of the scandal, Mossack Fonseca, a Panamanian law firm considered one of the world's 5 biggest wholesalers of offshore secrecy. The company's founders are Jürgen Mossack, born in Germany to a father who served in the Waffen-SS during World War II, and Ramon Fonseca, an award-winning novelist and high-ranking politician. Fonseca resigned just weeks ago as advisor to Panamanian President Juan Carlos Varela following growing accusations over his firm's role in Brazil's Petrobras scandal. This is how he describes his work.
Imagine if we were a knife factory. We sell knives. And if the knife is used to commit a murder, I don't know if this makes sense, we aren't responsible if the knife is used to commit a crime. That drug trafficker, that corrupt politician, the person who used that company, we aren't in contact with them. We didn't help him with anything. The only thing we've done is to create a legal structure that we sold to a professional who in turn sold it to them.
In short, Mossack Fonseca sets up shell companies with fictitious board members, an entity that only serves to manage money a client is looking to shield from tax authorities back home.
Now, if they were using them for nefarious purposes, and I suspect some of them were, that falls in the regulation of the country where these individuals reside. It's up to the French. It's up to the British. They have broken no laws in Panama or in the British Virgin Islands or in Bermuda or anywhere else.
Panama is considered one of the world's 100 or so tax havens. It has weak official safeguards against financial crime and is home to some 100,000 offshore companies. In Panama, financial regulators, police, the judiciary, and the political system are all corrupted or influenced by the dirty money machine. It's one of the signs of a tax haven. Others include low or no taxes, little or no information exchange with other countries, and few non-financial activities. They're located all over the world, in the Caribbean, the Pacific, and in Europe. The list is expected to shrink, however, starting in 2017, when countries will be invited to exchange names and account information automatically. It's meant to force tax havens out of the shadows, but only time will tell if it has any real effect on countries and clients alike.
Well, the Panama Papers are emblematic of one of the big issues that have been driving the U.S. presidential race: populist anger over big and elitist wealth. Time now for a look at this week on the campaign trail. Donald Trump's campaign for the Republican presidential nomination got tripped up this week in Wisconsin. The billionaire frontrunner was defeated by Texas Senator Ted Cruz. That capped off an already bad week for Trump, including some controversial comments that left him scrambling to woo back women voters.
It was a bruising week for Donald Trump, even before rival Ted Cruz crushed him in Wisconsin. So much so, his campaign pulled in his wife Melania in an effort to burnish her husband's flagging image.
He's a hard worker, he's kind, he has a great heart. He's tough, he's smart, he's telling the truth. He's a great leader. He's fair.
It's Melania's first official appearance at her husband's side, though not the first time she's been in play. At the end of last month, during campaigning in Utah, an anti-Trump group sniped at the former model, aiming to shock the state's Mormon community ahead of the primary there. It wasn't long before Trump responded, retweeting an unflattering photo of Ted Cruz's wife. The Texas senator hit the roof and had some choice words for his rival as he sought to portray his softer side.
Donald, you're a sniveling coward, and leave Heidi the hell alone.
It caps off a week of controversial comments from Trump over everything from NATO and nuclear weapons to saying women should face punishment if they have illegal abortions. Given his own campaign manager's recent violent treatment of a woman reporter, it's left Trump looking for any way he can to patch up mounting unpopularity with female voters.
Now, Donald Trump has been alienating Latino voters as well with anti-immigration talk. That's pushed many Latinos to apply for U.S. citizenship just so they can keep him from becoming president if he gets the Republican nomination. Here's more.
These are no ordinary workshops. In Miami, Hispanics eligible to become U.S. citizens are signing up by the hundreds. Many hope to become naturalized in time to vote in the November election against Donald Trump, assuming the Republican frontrunner ends up on the ballot. They say his brash rhetoric against undocumented immigrants spurred them into action.
He's very harsh on immigrants. We came to this country to work, to produce.
We're afraid that people who don't get along well with Latinos will win the presidency. So we want to support those that support us.
It's not unusual for citizenship applications to rise during election years, but this time naturalization officials say they're overwhelmed.
During the last election, we didn't see anything like that. This year is like historic. People are applying to become a U.S. citizen.
Strong turnout by Latino voters could tip the balance against Donald Trump in swing states. He's the candidate with the worst image among Hispanics. A recent Gallup poll shows that 77% view him unfavorably.
It's going to be very difficult for him to win states in which Hispanics are the swing voters, like in Florida, like in Colorado, like in New Mexico. But that's not his game. His game is to get white working class voters in states that are traditionally Democratic states like New Jersey, Pennsylvania.
Though the campaign is far from over, experts say Trump could change the country's electoral map. But having so many Latinos against him will likely be a major handicap if he wins the Republican ticket.
We'll wrap up now in Peru with one of the biggest issues in their presidential campaign. That is the forced sterilization of some 300,000 indigenous women in the late 1990s. The Peruvian health ministry promoted their sterilization under the government of Alberto Fujimori, the father of Keiko Fujimori, who's the leading presidential candidate today. The victims were all rural, non-native Spanish speakers, and survivors are now seeking justice and compensation. From the Peruvian Andes, Lori Fachot sent this report.
Ruth, a mother of 4 children, had her fallopian tubes tied without anaesthetic. A group of nurses came to her house 17 years ago and forced her to go to hospital.
The nurses grabbed hold of me and tied my hands and feet to a bed. One of them took hold of my head. The pain was unbearable. "It hurts," I cried. "Doctor, it hurts." He said, "Be strong, just help me do this." I said, "Doctor, I don't want you to cut me like this." But I could already feel the warm blood running down my body.
Roots is not an isolated case. Around 300,000 women were operated on without their consent. The idea of sterilizing indigenous women to eradicate poverty was implemented by Alberto Fujimori's government between 1996 and 2001. Today, Ruth is going to a village close to where she lives to tell these poor rural women, some of whom are illiterate, about their rights. That's because in November, the government started to register victims of forced sterilization. These women are seeking justice.
They took us home the same day of the operation in the same ambulance, and since then, no one's come to check if we're dead or if we're okay. Everyone's forgotten about us until now. We want justice, all of us who were forcibly sterilized.
This scar is from the operation. More than 2,000 women have spent the past 14 years locked in legal action against the state. But none of them has been recognised as a victim of forced sterilisation. In Lima, the Justice Minister says it's difficult to get to the truth.
From the 1990s until 2000, 2001, Peru had a birth control policy, and that policy included voluntary surgical sterilization. But what we need to establish is this: in which cases was this surgery voluntary, and in which cases was it forced? And that can only be done through the courts.
It's a sensitive political issue, right in the middle of a presidential campaign. Veronica Mendoza, a left-wing candidate, faces Keiko Fujimori in the presidential election. She says Alberto Fujimori's daughter was aware of the situation.
There's no doubt that Keiko Fujimori was an accomplice in the sterilisation of hundreds of poor rural women against their will, most of them non-native Spanish speakers. We know that it was state policy which came right from the top of government. They knew about it, the health ministers and the president at the time, Alberto Fujimori, who's now in prison for human rights abuses and corruption.
With the election looming, these women are worried that Keiko, the daughter of Alberto Fujimori, will be the next president of Peru.
Well, that's all the time we have for this Inside the Americas. We'll see you again next week for all the news from north to south.